Welcome to Abun Dance. You guessed it, a podcast dedicated to all things surrounding dance. I am Kristen.
And I am Hannah, and we are two best friends who are brought together by this art form.
Please join us in 5, 6, 7, 8. Hello, everyone. We are back here today for our second interview, and we're super excited because Hannah and I have someone here today with us that's very near and dear to our heart.
Yes, we have the lovely Solveig Santillano with us. She was a professor at Mercyhurst University, and while we know a lot about her, we don't know everything, so we're excited to hear more. Solveig, would you like to introduce yourself a little and tell our audience who you are and what you do?
Certainly. My name is Solveig Santillano, and I am an associate professor of dance over at Mercyhurst University, which is where I met both of you, which is a gift to me. And let's see, I started off initially in the theater and went through dance, I guess, through the back door. I just started taking a lot of different workshops. Along the way, I was very fortunate that my parents supported that. And through that, I was given movement opportunities, and I fell in love with that as well. So I've always had a broad appreciation for the arts in general and have a lot of gratitude for the opportunities I was given. But they brought me eventually to dance more seriously. So I have my undergraduate degree, my BFA from Juilliard, and a several master's program that I've gone through to gain the accreditation that I needed for going through the tenure process at Mercyhurst, with some career in between. So it's been a fun journey, and I'm excited to talk about it.
Yay, thank you so much. That's so awesome. So the first question we actually have for you is, are there any similarities or differences you can make from getting your degree at Juilliard, a conservatory, to then later on teaching dance at Mercyhurst, a smaller liberal arts university? Please share with everyone how long you danced professionally as well. That would be awesome.
Okay. Two very different questions because I'm still dancing. So I'd have to do crunch the numbers on that. But I'll give you a little bit more detail. Regarding going to a conservatory, it's interesting. I really had a lot of opportunities at a young age to study in more conservatory kinds of environments. And whereas I really loved them, I had 1 year of college before going to Juilliard and a year as a performing art intern in Minneapolis at the Children's Theater Company. So I did know when I went to Juilliard that the academics there were not as rigorous as what I had experienced, because let me tell you, I was in for a surprise when I went to Augustana College, which is the college that my father taught at for 49 years.
Oh, wow.
And so I did take my academics very seriously, and I got a lot more out of them for that reason. I think in going to a conservatory, it is a lot about doing. There's not as much theoretical application, and there's pros and cons to that. I actually think that I love school and the liberal arts because I sought them avidly through what I was reading personally, but also going back to my first Master of Arts and Liberal Studies was another chance to go back and do more liberal arts. I'm really grateful for those courses, and I feel like the grounding that it gives you, I think it's easier for you in many ways to be a contributing choreographer. It's better in terms of being an educator. It helps you to feel, I think, a little bit more confident when you're working on projects, because you have a lot more background that is giving you means and tools to understand how to think critically. And I don't feel like I didn't have that exactly, but I came about it in a different way because it was piecemeal from that year at Augustana College and then taking my academics seriously, even though I knew that a lot of my mates really kind of blew off those classes. So I'm not sure if that answers your question. I think both have value. The thing, I do think that there was a lot of physicalization that happened at Juilliard that I'm very grateful for, but it's also a lot to process. And I remember talking to one of my teachers at a later time when I was giving Sarah Rudner an interview for my final project for my master's program, the first master's that I did. And I was asking her about her background, and she said when she was at a liberal arts college and she only had one course that she could take, maybe there would be like 4 or 5 dance classes per week that she had, which of course we do much more than that at Mercyhurst. She said, you're really present for them. And I do remember being so tired that it was hard to be fully present in body, mind, and yeah, so I'm really grateful for what I've been given, and I can't really take myself out of my past. I know it's a gift. But I think education has changed over those years a lot too. And so I feel really grateful for that foundational information that I was given. But I've spent the rest of my life deepening my relationship to it. And that's been important to me too.
Yeah, and I know personally, just from having shared experiences with you, you can just tell how passionate you are about education and dance in general. And it's just such a inspirational thing to see for me, if that makes sense, just to see someone who I really look up to do what I'm hoping to do in the future too. It's just wonderful. So thank you for sharing.
I thank you for that. I feel like the program that you both went through, I'm really excited about it and proud of it. I'm happy to be a part of it. I think it was formed greatly through Tana Hunter, who is the foundation of how the program became what it is in terms of a very prominent ballet-based program that is has its niche in the world of dance and education. And one thing that this is a little bit of a side journey, but one thing that she always said is what we're doing before we had the BFA added is a BFA inside of a BA program. And so I think it's kind of cool that we're able to offer both of those opportunities, because some students really want to have a little bit more autonomy. So there's that early foundational year in the first year that I think helps people get their grounding and know whether or not the direction that they're going in is going to be something that's meaningful for them. And then it gives them a point of reference. So yeah, I'm not sure if I answered your question, but I think what I really like about it is that that the program is thoughtfully constructed, and that there is that underlying theory is I think pretty supportive of folks, so that they can really decide how to deepen and hone their interests inside of the field of dance. And I think that's important.
Absolutely. I actually had the opportunity this past year to speak to Ms. Hunter a little bit on the phone. She gave me some of the history and background of kind of how she developed and reshaped the dance curriculum at Mercyhurst. And that was for a paper I was writing at NYU, but it was really wonderful to learn more about that all.
I want to talk to you about your experiences at NYU at another time. I'm sure you've had many.
Yes.
It's
Awesome.
exciting.
And do you want to shift gears a little bit now to speaking about your professional experience a little bit more?
Sure. So as I had mentioned, I really think in some ways that my professional experience did start with the Children's Theater Company in many ways. It was because it was a professional organization and I was able to audition for performances, and I was working alongside the company. Even though I wasn't paid, I was paying for that opportunity. The education was quite good, and I got to perform with some amazing artists and see how both those of us who were in the intern program, those who had graduated to the apprentice level, and then the company members, how focused they were. So I felt very privileged and excited to start being able to. We did a film. I was a sister in Alice in Wonderland, and I did the Little Match Girl, and I did all these Puss in Boots. There were all these really magical shows, and I got to see through dance concerts and things like that I was doing on the side, but I got to see how a production could really be appealing, and something that was magnificently well lit, artfully costumed and put together, and beautifully performed. So even though I didn't get a chance to work consistently, that was an important time. And then I was hired back to actually be an assistant director and to teach in the dance department, which was new addition to their program. This is the NHSI, the Northwestern University program that I had done a little bit later, which was another program. So I was able to start teaching and start to kind of infuse some of those things. That was another point of entry. And then ironically, so the first three major things were in theater, because when I was at Juilliard, I had an injury. And so I wasn't able to dance as much the first year, in between the first and the second year. And between the second and the third year, I was looking for a job, and I auditioned for something, and I ended up working at the Lost Colony. So I was the lead. It was an actress role, and then I was dancing on the side because I made friends with all of those folks, and that was actually one of my early experiences with Pilobolus, because one of the members of the company, Austin Hartel, who was dating the dance captain at the time, came and choreographed a piece on those of us who were taking class regularly, because I would hang out with the dancers as well as the actors, and had a lot of fun with that. And then after that, when I graduated from Juilliard, I was doing. I was already working with Netta Pulvermarker, who was one of my classmates, who had founded a company called Off the Wall, and freelancing with some of my other classmates. Lisa Green took us to Toronto. That was kind of a fun tour that we got to go on, and performing in like downtown Baka concerts, and trying to kind of find my way that way. I also had been working with Anna Sokolow while I was at Juilliard. Every year I was chosen to dance with her, and had some of my favorite roles through her while I was there. And she invited me to be in her company. And so when I graduated, I went right to working with Anna Sokolow. The Players Project is the name of the company, which was really fun experience. And then also there was Ruby Shang and dancers. I started working with her, and she was doing some site-specific work that I might have talked to you about while you were at Mercyhurst, because they were very influential to me. We got to dance around Lincoln Center, around the fountain. There's all these structures that we were able to dance on, and there were a lot of us that were working on this material. We were in the fountain. It was really, really hot in New York City, and so it was full on sun. It was kind of fun to whip our hair in there, and I really enjoyed that quite a lot. And then we also did something that was celebrating a simul dance that was happening in France and the United States at the same time. And I was working with a small crew of dancers that Ruby had gotten together, and that expanded, and we taught it to other people. And we performed on the steps of the Lincoln Center Library, and had it was kind of a big, fun experience again that was outdoors, that had parameters. We were dancing on the steps. There was choreography that was partnering, and stepography, and also some parameters for some improvisation. It was really fun. And so some of those things were really have been very influential in my own dance making, and my kind of call to doing things that involve that are a little bit more inclusive and that might involve potentially community building or having some sort of dancing for a purpose, or just even being able to see how one might curate their own work.
Wow.
Yeah, after that, I moved away. I don't know how much you want to know of all this. I followed a boyfriend at the time who became my first husband. We went to Los Angeles, and I was there for about a year and got to work with Vince Patterson when I was there. It took me a little while to sort of get my feet in the ground because I wasn't necessarily a hip hop dancer. And so I felt very like modern in comparison to everybody else in the room. So it took me a little while to find training that made sense to me, that was both exciting and also had some classical roots in there. And then we left, we came back to Boston, and that's when I really started digging into education. I got a job running the dance program, which is pretty presumptuous of me, at Salem State College, because somebody had taken a leave of absence, I think to have a baby, and they never came back. So I was there for 2 years, and I lived in a number of different places, but I would go, when I was living in Gloucester for a little while, I would drive and go from one job to the next. So I'd stop at Manchester Health Club and I would teach there. I would stop at Salem State University and teach some classes there. I would keep going, sometimes carpooling with a friend of mine, and then rehearse in and around Boston, and worked and taught at a number of different places. So I had a lot of jobs while I was there. I was working with 3 different companies for a while, and teaching at, there might have been more than companies. I got an improvisation job with Synapse, with Chris Aiken and Olivier Besson, who are just amazing improvisation artists. Chris is an educator now and is doing really, really well. And so that was kind of fun. And then a number of other side companies with Nancy Compton and Diane Arvanites Noya, who had this company called Prometheus Dance. And she was really, I loved working with her. It was a company of all women. It was sometimes Chris Aiken would do some work with us, or Olivia. Yeah, so that kind of led me into moving back to New York. I got an apartment in Brooklyn and started touring with Momix. And I had done another little guest work with Anna Sokolow, and that got me reconnected back with Moses Pendleton, who I had done a little project with earlier, fresh out of school. And so then I toured with them internationally.
Oh wait, this is
about 6 years. Yeah.
This is so interesting. It's just like there's so many things that I didn't know about you that now I do, and I'm just like in awe. And I have a quick question. So didn't you say that you worked with Polopolis a little bit early on? And that's where, is that what you just said?
Actually, not directly, but Austin Hartel was the part before Adam Battlestein, was the part before Mark Santillano,
okay,
who is my husband and partner. So yeah, so there was this interesting context. And also I had an affinity for the work. A friend of mine, Lisa Giobbi, was touring with Momix and also doing a guest tour with Polopolis, and I saw the company while I was at Juilliard, and it blew me away. I was like, oh my God, this is exactly what I want to do. It was so incredibly moving. And that was, I think it's because, it appealed to me because it was a combination of theater and dance that was evocative and just fun. And I love partnering. So I found it very appealing. And then while I was at Juilliard, I was there under Martha Hill for 2 years. And then when she became the emeritus artistic director and Muriel Topez came in, she was big in lava notation. She had brought in Martha Clark, and I got to work with her. And Martha Clark was one of the original Polopolis artistic directors. And so I had some embodied experience with that company before I auditioned for Moses just after I was given a private audition, which was pretty darn cool. And here's kind of an interesting side story, but I was with some amazing dancers. They were very, very beautiful. Two of them got every single part at Juilliard, and I got the job and they didn't. So I think one thing that I have to say is that you just don't know like what somebody is looking for. And so as young artists, I think it's really important to not worry too much about which opportunities are given at any given time, because opportunities keep going. They do keep coming, and it's not just the opportunities, it's also it's tenacity. It's sort of, yeah, going the long road and not expecting to have things sort of always hand delivered to you, you know? So I think that those people that we always felt like were given roles on a silver platter, sometimes their careers were very short-lived. And I find that very, very interesting that that might be part of part of the story, but it's never the full picture. There's always more.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's wonderful. I think that actually ties perfectly into, I was going to ask what you learned from your career dancing professionally that you would try to kind of transfer to younger students, people that you're mentoring. And I think that maybe perhaps is one of the things that you try to kind of transfer and teach to other students. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always trying to figure out, because I feel very fortunate that I was given all these amazing opportunities. Like, wow, how did that happen? How did I have this incredible career? I feel humble about my abilities, and yet I know I worked for them. And so I think giving back has always been really important to me. I feel responsible. I feel like I got to work with some people that aren't alive anymore. And so I feel this sort of, I'm part of that dance family, and it's my obligation, my desire to share those experiences, because I can't be them, but I can be a conduit for what was especially inspiring to me, right? So so that's one piece. The other thing is I had some injuries that were really debilitating. So one of the injuries, I have had a long history with joint laxity. So my very first time I was injured was in 7th grade in gymnastics, and my my knee dislocated and didn't track very well after that. So I did this ancient surgery that I'm sure is unheard of. Maybe it is still done, but it was a lateral release. So they cut a lateral tendon, which means there was less stability, right? So problem. So it was important to me to learn as much as I could so that I could continue to work, right? But in becoming an educator, my goal then was injury prevention. And as I went deeper and deeper into somatics, I realized that dance was not only this opportunity to perform and sort of share something that for me was extremely meaningful, this sense of kind of making a character come to life and sort of attuning to the performance magic, if you will. There's an underlying interconnectivity that I feel like very fluent in. That's, I think, probably one of my gifts. And I felt like the stability is something I always have needed. And so I wanted, and I continue to want, to give students those inroads that were so helpful for me. What is it that you need to do to ground yourself? What is it that you need to do to maintain and grow confidence, right? So I feel like I lean into that component that was probably very different from how I was taught, because we were told
things have changed.
You'll never be a dancer, and you know what I mean? Like, we were told all of those things. The old pedagogy was still sort of happening, not from everybody, I had some very, very good teachers, but there were some instances that hurt so much. I never wanted to inflict that on another student.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I also think when I think of you, you're just so present in everything that you do and all of your past experiences you bring to the table, whether it's in the studio or if we're just having a conversation with you. And I think that's something that we all will want to embody. I know I do, as now a young artist going forward in my professional career, is just that presence and the life that you exude when you teach. It's just so honorable and something I really respect.
I really appreciate your words, because it is interesting. It's a process when you're working, when you have the ability to work with somebody for a period of 4 years. I would say, from my fellow educators, do take the work home with us. And just as much as I think students really enjoy the feedback, like, I know that feedback isn't going to always be forthcoming, but it really holds meaning when there is a deep connection between the students and that I really value that, because I think as I've continued to have a larger and larger distance from the age of my students, I think sometimes I'm perceived differently, less as a colleague and more as someone that is more of a figure of authority, or I'm not sure about authority because I think I bring a more of a, what's that?
Perhaps wisdom, maybe.
Maybe, yeah, I'm not sure, but I think that it's just beautiful that I think that both of you have brought that to your work throughout, and I will say it's flattering to me, but I also say that the fact that you're able to find beauty in the things that are around you is really an asset to the world, right? And that is something that both of you, I see in both of you, that you've been able to sort of bring something special to the community, and that you do have an awareness for others, and that's anyway. So I'm just going to shine that gift right back to you both, and say I've always appreciated that desire to connect and to be caring individuals, and that's been very important to me too.
Yeah, well, thank you. And that's a big reason why we wanted to start this podcast, to shed light on different topics in the dance world, in the dance field, and having someone like you who we really looked up to then share your experiences. So we're just like feeding it all back to different avenues, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's exciting. And I really applaud the fact that you're doing this, because I think we've all been feeling so frustrated about the ways the world is kind of not performing as it has been, and not providing maybe the same opportunities. And this entrepreneurship and this leadership that you're exhibiting, that is, I think, it signals that there's something is working. So kudos to both of you for doing that, offering that back into the community. I think that's so important.
Thank you. We appreciate it. So to segue a little bit into something else, but I feel like you kind of touched upon this a little bit already. So you're also a registered yoga teacher and certified Laban Bartenia fundamental analyst. So you mentioned about injury prevention and somatics. Is this kind of where your desire to get those credentials stemmed from? Or like, where did that kind of fit into the timeline of your career and experience?
Okay, well, thanks for that question. It's a fun one to answer. Interestingly enough, the integrated movement studies, that Bartenia, LABA notation, I had that all at Juilliard, but I had it at a level that was, I thought, deep, and it did hone my ability to observe others. But it wasn't until I went back through the certification that I really claimed it in a way that I am so grateful for. It was the right thing to do. And that was more recent. I did that in 2019. And what I think is really great about this particular program, first of all, the faculty is phenomenal. Both the founding faculty and the training is so good that I when I was asking about it, one of the teachers is a friend of mine and a colleague, somebody that I had studied with through Bill Evans, doing many, many pedagogy workshops with her, and Cadence. And I had said, why this program? Because there are so many things I want to do, and this is a chunk of change, and what is going to be special about it? And her answer was just so smart and so thoughtful that it really appealed to me. And one of the things that she said was, it's about integrating what you know, giving a system, and actually not just one system, giving many, many options for both seeing and analyzing movement and facilitating, opportunities for transformation and experiences, and being able to articulate those things. And I've always craved greater and greater ability to articulate what it is that I'm looking for, and or what that I see, or how to sort of facilitate experiences that have meaning. So it affected me creatively. It affected me as an educator. It affected me as an artist, as a performer. So I'm still learning. Like it's a grounding that I really appreciate, but it is like when you certify, you kind of realize, and this is the beginning of many more wonderful experiences, and there's always more. Okay, that can loop me back into yoga, because the principle of yoga in many ways is that there is more, that we take the things that we have struggled with in our own lives, we take our brokenness, we take the things that are our missing pieces. We're never going to not have them, but we use them to create. Right. And so that to me is a really productive way of looking at the world. And I think that yoga was really helpful for me to have a lens to sort of be able to keep my grounding. Right. Because think about it, when you go back to my early physical struggles, it was to find stability for mobility. Right. Because those are always on a continuum. We need both. We need to have stability in order to move in the world, and we need to not be stagnant, right? So there are both of those pieces, and it's a dynamic relationship that we always have with that. It's not a fixed point. So when I was touring and it wasn't going so well, I will say that touring was amazing and I learned many things, but there were some stresses on the road, and it was hard on relationships. And my very first marriage, of course, did not make it. But I stumbled into a yoga class, and this was one of those experiences where I went, whoa, there's enough time to stay with my breath, to deepen my relationship to self, and to find stability and movement. And also there were other aspects that were sort of happening in that classroom, right? You had to lay down, you had to both put your discipline on, but you also had to receive. And there was something about that sort of the dynamic of the class that felt like, this can really support my touring. So I used that yoga classes initially to become a better dancer and to stay more stabilized while I was always on the road, because my suitcase sometimes was always packed, right? So it was always moving from one place to the next. And that was amazing. And it also gave me some skill sets, right? Because I had gymnastics in my background, and suddenly I was doing tasks that was specifically designed to help the body sort of remember or find more perspective, like shift your perspective. So I was getting upside down, I was on my head and doing headstands, I was doing things like that. And that started to come into my choreography. And that was giving me something. That was right around the time where I made this beautiful duet with Tim Aceto called Two, that Momix is still performing. It was one of the highlights of my career through Momix. I'm really proud of that piece, and I'm really proud that it's still being performed. I think it's it's stunning. And I wouldn't have found that if I hadn't have found yoga. Jump ahead, it was a way to stay in shape, and it was a way on tour, because I always took my yoga mat with me. I always did ballet bar. I always did my PT, whatever it was that I needed to do to stay disciplined and present in my body. So I could, because we had to be able to go out and hold a penché arabesque for a really long time. So I needed line, I needed precision, but I also needed to be able to get into my back bend and sort of dance around on my hands and feet, upside down and inverted. So when I became pregnant and came off the road, and then after a year, this is when I was in my marriage and my relationship with Mark Santillano, who was touring at Plaublus at the same time that I was touring with Momix when we met. And something really clicked, and we had a wonderful courtship, and he ended up coming off the road a year after Ella was born. When I was pregnant, I was thinking I was going to finish my contract at the very least, and then see if I would maybe do part-time work. And I realized kind of within the 3-minute conversation with Cynthia Quinn, I was not going to do that I wanted more autonomy at that point. And I also wanted to shift my focus. I felt very blessed that I had that career, and that it was more important to me to be there for my baby and not leave Ella in the care of some random person and not be able to take her on the road. So that was a determinant factor for me that kind of sped or accelerated that decision. And so I was afraid to move to Springfield, where Mark took an artist in residence job after he said, this is too hard to keep touring, and I want the relationship to work, and I want to be there for our child too. So I thought, oh my gosh, they're not going to have yoga. There's going to be nothing. I'm not going to be in New York anymore. There won't be dance. There won't be life, and I was so wrong. And I would say every time I've moved, there is a sense of fear and adventure. And I've always wondered, will I find opportunities? And every single move was something really beautiful and incredible. And I would have missed out on it if I hadn't have gone. So I ended up finding a studio there and teaching for this individual. It's Success Naturally. And the woman who held that would bring in guest artists. And through one of those guest artists, I met Judith Laster, and I went, oh my God, the scales are coming off my eyes. This is exactly who I need to study with. So Mark and I went with Ella to San Francisco. I stayed with my sister and her family, and did my first teacher training. And that led to other teacher trainings. And that led to thinking about, okay, I really want to, I was thinking I wanted to be an Iyengar teacher because I had many Iyengar teachers that were very good. I was kind of open. I thought maybe it's Anusara. I liked his work. I thought maybe it's Jivamukti because I had taken with them in New York. And lo and behold, there was a little studio kind of nearby me in Rochester, about 3 hours away. And I went to go to a Judith Laster workshop, and Francois was teaching at this particular studio, and I started to take his class, and I jumped on board, and I took with him several different teacher trainings, and that worked out really well. And so I've been hungry. I'm always hungry to learn more, and very grateful for having a family that was supportive of me doing that, and for the ability and the wherewithal to be able to do a lot of those kinds of certifications, sometimes on a singular, very low salary, right? So I think it's about making the deal. As you're launching your career, it's, what do I need? What do I want? Is it a good idea? Sometimes it's a good question to ask, because usually doing more certifications involves a cost, right? Because there's financial cost and a time cost. But thankfully, my family was always really supportive of my enormous curiosity. I don't know
Wonderful.
if that answers your question. I yammered a
Yes,
lot.
yes, no, you bring up so many valuable points. And I think right there at the end, too, that it's a really good point that certifications are expensive and it's a big investment. But if it's worthwhile for your career, then I mean, there's just so many positive outcomes from that. I know it's something I'm potentially interested in down the road to dive a little bit more into somatics, but it seems so complementary to dance in terms of just the fact that it's a mind and body practice. And I don't know if you feel this as a more of a modern dancer, but I did a little research this year about in respect to ballet technique specifically, how incorporating somatics more for ballet dancers helps them to feel more autonomous in their dancing and in their body, like they're able to control or have more control over their body, whereas in ballet technique classes often it's so much of just, you know, what the teacher says and you have to just kind of follow their instruction and you don't really always get much say. So I thought that was just interesting, and being someone who wants to pursue dance education but ballet education a lot, like I think I would benefit a lot from exploring somatics a little bit more and being able to then transfer that and give that to my students.
Right. I would really appreciate that that's something you're thinking about. And I would say that there's a really amazing community out there. One of the certifications that I did was through Bill Evans, who is now currently on the West Coast again, but he was right here in Brockport, which made it easy for me to go initially. And he has worked extensively with Peggy Hackney, who is one of his dance company members, with Kitty Daniels, who now teaches anatomy sometimes for him at his pedagogy workshops. And there's a circle of educators out there that are diving deep into somatics, and there are a circle of people who are facilitating experiences that are exciting and they're reasonable. Like those workshops, I was able to afford them out of pocket a little bit more easily. And I learned a lot and grew from each of those kinds of experiences. Cadence Whittier, that I just had talked to you about before, who's on the IMS faculty, has also taught for Bill Evans, which is why I had known her initially. And she is doing just that. She was one of the few people who at the time was applying it back to ballet. And she has a book that you might want to look into. And I can send you when I have my hands on it. I can't remember exactly what it is, but her book is beautiful. She has a lot of really great ideas, and you might enjoy that.
Yeah,
I think it's so interesting because oftentimes when dancers will come into our program, oftentimes there will be this tension for some that have not had a lot of improvisation, of wanting to be told what to do. And so it's like uncovering that part of themselves of like, but you're a collaborator too. You are a creator. And even if this isn't something that you ultimately want to do, if you find it more interesting to use the information that's coming from another artist, because that can be super valuable and fun, it's worth exploring. Who are you and what do you want to say? That I think that helps you to solidify your own training.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, I think this is probably a great time to take a short break.
All right, sounds good.
Here's a word from our sponsor.
All right, and we're back. So, Solveig, you mentioned Mark a little bit earlier on in our conversation. Can you talk about what it's like to have your partner as a fellow dancer and how that maybe affected your life as a dancer and how you even developed Somar? If you could talk a little bit about how that came about, Somar Dance Works, your company that you're co-directors of.
Yes, absolutely. I would say that it's been amazing. I mean, I live with my partner, so there's the sort of easy access. So we have lots of conversations that I think have brought about a number of different pieces and dreams into fruition and performances. And it can be a lot of fun. We both enjoy collaborating. And I remember when I was working with Momix, I remember right towards the end when I was starting to burn out, because it is pretty intense. I remember thinking to myself, it will be fun one day, as much as I'm enjoying this experience, it will be really fun one day to just work with my friends. Not that your dance company isn't your friends. They're becoming like your family, but to have a sense of sort of playfulness, like there's just a lot of demands. It's a pretty stressful circumstance to be under, to have huge audiences and sort of a competitive sort of environment, that was, sometimes we had multiple companies out. Our company was very prolific, and even though I had a full-time job, as much as one can say, I had healthcare benefits and all kinds of things that I feel very fortunate to have had, and regular money. It was never about getting enough time on the road and touring. But it was still stressful because you didn't have autonomy about where you went or when you went, or whether or not you could go and be with a family member or sort of experience a life event that might be happening in your family. So there was costs as well as benefits. And so to live with somebody, to find somebody and fall in love with somebody who had the same kind of passion, there's something you both really appreciate one another, and yet it's really important to make sure that you both have autonomy. You don't want to be the same person, and we're not. We are totally not, as you know. we're very different. So I think what we've done is we worked really hard to make sure that we both have that sense of a personal identity, as well as a partnership, and I think one of the things that we've noticed that we have to watch is that because we have a company together, we have a child together, we have we share a home together, and a pet, and we also are teaching together in the same department. We have to be careful that we don't talk about work all the time, right? We have to make sure that we're both in finding other interests and feeding ourselves, and making sure that we have friendships that are nourishing our own desires, and I have really been supported in some amazing ways, right? Because I wouldn't have been able to do all of these things. Like I literally have been gone. Like when I did the IMS, I was gone most of the summer. We met for a week in between, but I had like 4 weeks where I was in, or maybe 6 weeks, and then another 4 weeks or something like that. So I've been away a lot. And when I did my MFA, that was all me. One summer, Mark had come with Ella for part of that time, and we collaborated on something through that as well. So it is wonderful. And we've made some work that I'm really proud of, and that is very special to me personally. In the beginning, we really hadn't done all that much in the studio together. Mark had invited me to do a photo shoot with he and Becky Jung, another Palabalian who's a beautiful dancer, with Lois Greenfield. And so that was one of our first experiences of dancing and moving together. Otherwise, we had our own companies, right? So we weren't working together. So after the baby was born, we had been teaching at a place, I think it's called SOPA, that was in Connecticut. And Mark would watch Ella when I was teaching, and versa versa. And so that was fun for me, because I was still kind of dancing then. I wasn't just being a mom. Not that that's a just, but it was good for me to sort of have that professional side still, being able to express myself in that way, and stay in my body. And we created a piece together on SOPA in one of their summer sessions. And so we started to do that. We started to do some pickup work here or there, choreographing for different schools or programs, going to do guest gigs. And we just basically, we didn't know where the income was going to come from, right? Because it was a little bit of a surprise to, I mean, we're both artists and we were in artist minds. And then when I wasn't touring, there just wasn't that extra income, right? So it was sometimes a little pressureful for that. But when we moved to Springfield and we started to create, I just remember the feeling of going in the studio and going, oh my God, because we had both our separate experiences, but we had some shared vocabulary. It was just so fun and so meaningful. So our very first piece that we made together was Twine. And that was like, well, I climbed all over Mark, and I, you know what I mean? It's like, it was really exciting. And I had, we both had such a wonderful time with that. And then when we performed it, the dean, his last name was Belcher, David Belcher. I'm not sure of his first name right now, but the dean of SMS is what it was called at the time, had loved our work and was raving about it. We were sitting in like an event and we were sort of taking this all in of how successful it was. And we just Mark had said to me, you know, hey, you want to start a company? I was like, hey, yeah. So we named it. It became a thing. And then we started to get pickup work, right? So we were doing the hustle a little bit. Like sometimes it would be through like, okay, Ella's going to kindergarten. Let's do like Dr. Seuss Read Across America Day. Let's do our Dr. Seuss pieces and let's create a program and let's add more to that. And so we were starting to kind of naturally create performances for ourselves and getting invitations to do different things throughout the community, which was always a lot of fun. And then at one point, and this is closer to when I started to work full time, we had a meeting with Tana Hunter, and I remember sitting in the office with she and Mark and saying, hey, we've got this company. How do you feel about having an artist in residence, like a company in residence? And she was really open and supportive of that. So we were very fortunate. We were able to start rehearsing and we're supported in that way. And then we also had some wonderful students, such as both of yourselves, who were interested in working with us. So initially there was no audition, it was invitation. And then over time, we started to have auditions every year.
Wonderful. I think you touched upon some really great things. It's definitely clear that you guys are wonderful collaborators. Hannah and I have witnessed that in SOMAR, but you also, like you said, you both have your distinct voices, and we've been able to see that as well through having each of you as professors in your own dance technique classes. But I think even within SOMAR too, I think it's clear sometimes when you see a whole performance saying like, oh, that's definitely a Solveig piece, or that's definitely a Mark piece, or they definitely work together. I think as dancers, having worked with you guys for so long, that we can kind of pinpoint your individuality, but also like you're wonderful collaborators as well.
I would totally agree with that. I remember like even when we were freshmen, I think at school, and we weren't in SOMAR at this point, but we went to a performance, and I just remember thinking like, oh, I could just even just getting to know you for those first couple months, you could just distinctly say like, oh, that was definitely like a Solveig piece, or that was a Mark piece, as Kristen was saying, or they collaborated. And there's just such beautiful like little nuggets about each one of you, like you separately and also you together, you and Mark, that makes SOMAR just come to life and become the thing that it is. So just to be a part of that was super exciting and something I will cherish with me going forward. And I think Kristen can say the same.
Yes, definitely loved being part of that experience. It was always so fun.
Well, I'm so glad to hear that, and because we want it to be fun, we really do, and it is sort of we want it to be from the heart. We don't want it to be because we have to do it. We want it to be because it is fun for others, and so we're actually really excited to have that opportunity this year. Last year we had to sort of step back because there were so many other needs that COVID kind of demanded on us, and it was just kind of confusing. How do you create, a safe environment? So we're super excited about being able to do that again this year, and kind of ready. But it's true, and I do think that we've talked about this. We've talked about, like, okay, our modern classes are different. How are they different? From a lot of different perspectives. We've danced with different people. We have different approaches. Thank goodness that there's somebody with Mark's sense of humor and silliness, and that really comes through his choreography, his quirkiness, right? He likes to disrupt patterns. He likes to create surprises. And I think that's really important. I'm really interested in how do things flow, and how do they feel, and how do you know what I mean? So it is fun to work together. I'm always learning something. There's not really a set formula, and yet we have had some similar shared aesthetics, which can be really helpful, right, from our past experiences.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, to kind of wrap things up today, we were wondering if you could just tell us a little bit about what you love about being a dance educator. And you've definitely touched upon this in all the different conversations that we've had today, but maybe just kind of sum it all up together here.
Sure. Well, first of all, I feel really lucky because I think I am somewhat of a perpetual student. I love being a student. And so being in an educational setting invites me to maintain that sense of curiosity. And I love sort of figuring out how to translate like I had mentioned before, the experiences that I've had and what's needed. I like thinking about the individual and seeing what about that individual am I seeing in front of me, and how might I invite other perspectives or other kinds of experiences. So again, leaning back into that integrated movement study, some of the movement analysis, I find it really fascinating to watch other people's movement signatures, right? We all have a special and unique signature, and figuring out how do you honor that which is delightfully unique, and also create choice making, because I think personal empowerment is so important to me, right? That's something that being a female and growing up in the time that I did grow up, and wanting to sort of somehow break some of the parameters that I felt were present in educational systems, and figure out how does one create and access one's own voice. That's so important to me. And so I really appreciate having the opportunity to work with others to claim or to support their process of finding their voice. And I feel really blessed because the students who come to Mercyhurst are often just so fun to work with because of who they are, their passion, they're well-intended. It's exciting to me to be a part of that support system, to try to find ways to create experiences for young artists who have so much